Tonight, we're going on a journey together, not to a distant land or a fantasy world, but to the most incredible place you've never imagined. We're traveling back to meet the toughest people who ever lived. Your ancestors. This isn't a story about superheroes or warriors with magical powers. This is about real humans, people who face challenges so extreme that if you or I were dropped into their world for even a single day, we probably wouldn't survive until sunset. But here's what makes this story perfect for tonight. These people didn't survive through panic or constant stress. They survived through patience, through watching, through waiting, through the kind of deep, steady endurance that we're going to explore together over the next 2 hours. So get comfortable, let this story wash over you. And as we walk through the ancient world together, let yourself marvel at where you came from. Because every single person listening right now carries the DNA of survivors so tough, so resilient, so incredibly adapted to hardship that it almost doesn't seem real. But it is real, and by the end of tonight, you'll understand just how extraordinary you really are. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The greatest survival story never told. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with absolutely nothing. Not just no phone or no electricity. I mean nothing. You're standing in tall grass on the African savanna. The sun is already hot even though it just rose. You're completely naked. No shoes, no tools, no water bottle, no knife, not even a piece of string. Around you the grassland stretches for miles. In the distance you can see acacia trees scattered across the plains. You hear sounds, birds calling, something large moving through brush far away, and closer, much closer, you hear a low rumble that might be a lion. Your body is completely exposed. You look down and realize something terrifying. You're not particularly strong. A chimpanzee could tear you apart. You're not particularly fast. A hyena could run you down easily. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor plating on your skin, no venom, no camouflage. You are by every measure one of the most vulnerable creatures on this entire continent. And yet somehow your ancestors not only survived in this world, they thrived. They spread across the entire planet. They outlasted every other human species. They became us. How? That's what we're going to explore tonight. Because the answer isn't what you think. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being the toughest. And toughness, real toughness, is something completely different than we imagine. Modern soldiers are incredible. They train for years. They push their bodies to extreme limits. They learn to function on minimal sleep, limited food and constant stress. They're among the toughest people alive today. But if you took an elite modern soldier, stripped them of all their gear, their weapons, their GPS, their radio, their backup, and dropped them into the world our ancestors faced every single day, they'd be in the same boat as any of us. Vulnerable, exposed, desperately trying to remember everything they'd ever learned about survival. Because the ancient world wasn't a battlefield you could win and go home from. It was a battlefield you woke up on every single morning for your entire life. Let me paint you a more specific picture. You're a human living 50,000 years ago in East Africa. You're part of a small group, maybe 25 people total. Your family is there, your children, your parents if they've survived long enough, which isn't guaranteed. You woke up this morning in a temporary camp. There's no tent. You slept on the ground under the stars, close to a fire that someone had to keep feeding all night long to keep predators away. Your bed was dirt. Your blanket was your own body heat and the warmth of sleeping close to others. You're hungry. You're almost always at least a little hungry. There was no breakfast waiting. There's no guarantee of lunch or dinner either. Food is something you have to find every single day, and some days you don't find much. Your feet hurt. They always hurt. Yesterday you walked maybe 15 miles searching for water because the stream you'd been using dried up. Your feet are covered in calluses thick as leather. But even those don't completely stop the pain of walking on thorns, rocks, and sun-baked earth. You're thirsty too. Water is scarce this season. The group found a muddy pool yesterday, and everyone drank, even though you knew the water might make you sick. But thirst doesn't give you options. You drink what you find or you die, and always, there's the awareness of danger. Last week, lions took a woman from a neighbouring group. 2 months ago, a child in your own group was snatched by a leopard at dawn. Snakes hide in the grass. Crocodiles wait at the river. Even other humans can be dangerous when food is scarce and territories overlap. This is your life, not for a deployment, not for a mission, forever. And here's the thing that should blow your mind. People lived this way for hundreds of thousands of years. Not just survived it, they raised children in it. They laughed, told stories, made art, fell in love, taught each other, and passed down knowledge that kept getting better and better. They were tougher than any human alive today, not because their muscles were stronger, though they were incredibly strong, but because their minds, their endurance, their ability to adapt was forged in a furnace of hardship we can barely imagine. Think about what that means. Every single person listening to this right now is here because your ancestors survived impossible odds. They survived droughts that killed most living things. They survived disease without medicine. They survived predators without weapons beyond sharpened sticks. They survived hunger that would have killed us in weeks. Your DNA is the result of thousands of generations of the toughest quality control imaginable. The weak didn't make it. The unlucky didn't make it. The ones who gave up didn't make it. You are descended from the ones who kept going, and that toughness isn't gone. It's inside you right now, written into every cell, embedded in your nervous system, hiding in your ability to endure stress, to adapt to change, to keep moving forward when everything seems impossible. So before we dive into the specifics of how our ancestors survived, take a moment to appreciate this. You're not just a random person living a random life. You're the latest chapter in the greatest survival story ever told. Your great-great-great-grandmother, going back 10,000 generations, walked through a world that would terrify us. She gave birth without hospitals. She healed without antibiotics. She found food without stores. She protected her children without police or walls or locks. And she succeeded. Because you're here, that's where we're starting tonight. With the understanding that toughness isn't about muscles or weapons. It's about the ability to face impossible circumstances and find a way through. It's about patience, endurance, creativity, cooperation. It's about being human in the deepest sense of the word. Now let's walk back into that ancient world together. Let's see how they did it. Let's understand what real toughness actually means. Because once you see what your ancestors survived, you'll never think about yourself the same way again. Before we go deeper, I want you to hit that subscribe button. We're going to spend the next 2 hours exploring the most incredible survival story in history, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Trust me, the details get even more mind-blowing from here. Ready? Let's continue. Chapter 2. The First Teachers. How knowledge became our greatest weapon. Here's a question that should haunt you. Why did humans survive when we were so obviously weaker than everything around us? A lion can kill with its jaws. An elephant can crush with its weight. A snake can kill with venom. What did humans have? The answer is something no other animal possessed in quite the same way. We could learn. And more importantly, we could teach. Let me show you what I mean. Picture a child, maybe 4 years old, sitting next to her grandmother. They're at the edge of camp, and the old woman is pointing to plants. Not just any plants, specific ones. This one, the grandmother says, holding up a root, you can eat, but only after you cook it in the fire. If you eat it raw, you'll get sick. Your belly will hurt so badly you'll wish you were dead. The child watches carefully. She touches the root, smells it, looks at the shape of the leaves. Now this one, the grandmother continues, pointing to another plant nearby, looks almost the same, but see the difference. This one has 3 ridges on the stem instead of 2. This one will kill you. Even cooked, never touch it. The child nods. She'll remember. She has to. Her life depends on it. This scene happened millions of times across thousands of generations, and this is why humans survived. Every other animal's born with instincts. A baby deer can walk within hours. A lion cub knows how to crouch and pounce without being taught. But humans, we're born almost completely helpless. We can't walk, we can't feed ourselves, we can't survive alone for years. We're born weak on purpose because instead of instincts, we have something better. We have the ability to learn anything, and we have elders who can teach us everything they've learned in their entire lives. Think about what an advantage this created. A lion is born knowing how to hunt antelope. That's incredible. But what if the antelope disappear? The lion doesn't adapt easily. It knows what it knows. A human child is born knowing almost nothing. But by the time that child is 10 years old, she's learned which plants heal wounds, which plants are poisonous, which stars to follow for navigation, how to make fire, how to chip stone into blades, where water hides underground, what animal tracks mean, and how to predict weather by watching clouds. She's learned things her grandmother discovered, things her great-grandmother figured out, things passed down for hundreds of generations. Every human carries a library in their mind, and that library was written through hardship. Let me give you a specific example that shows how powerful this was. Imagine your group finds a new plant. Nobody knows if it's safe to eat, but you're starving and you have to make a decision. Someone takes a tiny bite, just a taste. They wait. Hours pass. If they get sick, everyone learns, don't eat that. If they survive, the group has a new food source. That's a harsh lesson. Sometimes people died discovering what was poisonous, but their sacrifice wasn't wasted. Their children remembered, and their children's children remembered. Over thousands of years, this created an encyclopedia of knowledge. Every region, every environment had experts. People who knew the land so well they could find food where others saw nothing. And this knowledge wasn't written down. It couldn't be. Writing didn't exist yet. Instead, it was woven into stories. Around the fire at night, the elders would tell tales, but these weren't just entertainment. They were lessons disguised as stories. Let me tell you about the time the Great Drought came, an elder might say. Our group was dying of thirst, but your great-uncle, he remembered something his mother told him. There was a valley 3 days' walk to the east where a spring sometimes flowed, underground. Even when the surface was dry, if you dug deep enough, water would appear. So we walked, for 3 days with almost no water. Some wanted to turn back, but we kept going. And when we reached the valley, we dug. And the water was there, just like the story said. The children listening to this don't just hear an exciting story. They learn geography. They learn that water can hide underground. They learn the importance of remembering what elders say. They learn that endurance pays off. Every story was a survival lesson. This is why humans became the ultimate survivors. We turned experience into knowledge, and we turned knowledge into culture. A wolf pack might have 30 or 40 wolves, but each wolf only knows what it learned in its own lifetime. A human group of 30 people carried the accumulated knowledge of hundreds of lifetimes. Grandmother's wisdom passed to mother, passed to daughter, passed to granddaughter, each generation adding new discoveries to the collection. This created something incredible. It created acceleration. Every generation didn't start from zero. They started from where the previous generation left off. So tools got better, strategies got smarter, understanding of the environment got deeper. 10,000 years ago, humans were making the same basic stone tools they'd made for hundreds of thousands of years. But slowly, innovations appeared. Better techniques for chipping stone, new ways to attach blades to spears, improved methods for making fire. Each innovation was tiny, but they accumulated, and that accumulation is why humans spread across every environment on Earth while other animals stayed in their ecological niches. Polar bears are perfectly adapted to the Arctic, but they can't survive in the desert. Camels are perfectly adapted to deserts, but they can't survive in the Arctic. Humans? We survive everywhere. Arctic, desert, jungle, mountains, plains, coast. We're not adapted to any of them, but we can learn to survive in all of them. That's the power of teaching and learning. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Teaching requires something most animals don't have. It requires patience. A mother lion shows her cubs how to hunt by example, but she doesn't explain. She doesn't break it down into steps. She doesn't check for understanding. Humans do all of that. A father teaching his son to make a stone blade doesn't just hand him a rock and walk away. He sits down, he shows each motion slowly. He explains which rocks work best and why. He corrects mistakes, he encourages, he teaches. This kind of teaching requires empathy. You have to understand what another person doesn't know. You have to see the world from their perspective. You have to care whether they learn. And this empathy, this teaching, this patience, it created social bonds stronger than any other species had. In your group of 30 people, everyone taught everyone. Adults taught children, but children also taught each other. They played games that were actually practice for hunting, gathering, and escaping danger. Teenage boys practiced throwing spears at targets for hours, competing with each other, learning accuracy and strength. Teenage girls practiced weaving containers from grass, identifying plants, and carrying water. But they weren't just working, they were teaching each other. Try holding it this way. I found a plant yesterday that works better for this. Watch how I do it. Every interaction was an opportunity to share knowledge, and the group benefited enormously, because if one person discovered something useful, within days the entire group knew about it. Compare that to most animals. If a crow figures out a clever way to crack nuts, maybe its offspring learn by watching. But the knowledge spread slowly, if at all. When a human discovered something useful, it spread at the speed of conversation. By that evening around the fire, everyone knew. This made humans the most adaptable species on Earth. When climate changed and forests turned to grasslands, humans adapted. When droughts dried up rivers, humans adapted. When prey animals migrated to new regions, humans followed and adapted. Knowledge was our greatest weapon. More powerful than claws, more useful than speed, more versatile than venom, and it's still inside you today. Every time you learn something new, you're using the same mental machinery your ancestors used to survive. Every time you teach someone, you're continuing the oldest human tradition. Every time you remember a lesson that keeps you safe, you're benefiting from thousands of generations of accumulated wisdom. You're the latest link in an unbroken chain of teachers and learners stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. If you're finding this fascinating, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what's the most important survival lesson someone in your family taught you. I want to hear your stories because they're a part of this same tradition. Now, let's talk about the moment that changed everything. The moment humans gained a power that seemed almost magical. The moment we learned to steal fire from the sky. Chapter 3: The day we learned to steal fire. Lightning strikes a tree. The dry wood explodes into flame. Within minutes, the fire spreads, consuming grass and bush, sending animals fleeing in every direction. Most creatures run away. Fire means death. But one small group of humans doesn't run. They watch, they wait. And when the flames die down, when only glowing embers remain in the burned tree, someone makes a decision that will change our species forever. They reach out and take the fire. We don't know exactly when this first happened. It was probably over 1 million years ago, maybe longer. But we know it did happen, because controlling fire became one of the defining characteristics of being human. And when I say it changed everything, I mean everything. Let me show you what life looked like before fire. Then you'll understand why this was the most important technology humans ever mastered. Before fire, humans were locked into the same schedule as every other animal. When the sun set, the world belonged to predators. Lions hunt at night, leopards hunt at night, hyenas hunt at night, and humans, with our poor night vision and soft bodies, were perfect prey. So before fire, every night was the same. You found the safest place you could. Maybe a cave if one was available, maybe a tree you could climb, maybe just a spot where you could put your back against rocks and hope nothing found you. You couldn't sleep deeply. Every sound might be a predator, every shadow might be death. You drift in and out of consciousness, exhausted, terrified, waiting for sunrise. Injuries from nighttime attacks were common. Archaeological evidence shows that big cats killed a significant number of early humans. We were prey, but then fire changed the equation. Imagine being in that same dangerous night. But now, in the center of your group, there's a fire burning. Flames dancing, heat radiating out, smoke rising into the dark sky. And the predators stay back. Lions, even though they're stronger than any human, won't cross the fire line. The flames terrify them at a deep instinctual level. Same with hyenas, same with leopards. Suddenly you have a zone of safety, a bubble of light in the darkness where you can actually rest, where children can sleep without being snatched, where you can let your guard down just a little. For the first time in evolutionary history, humans could own the night. But fire did so much more than protection. Fire gave us cooked food, and cooked food changed our bodies. Raw meat is tough, it takes enormous energy to digest. Raw tubers and roots are often poisonous or nearly indigestible. Our ancestors spent hours every day chewing, trying to extract enough calories to survive. But cooked meat, soft, easy to digest, more calories absorbed for less effort. Cooked tubers, the toxins break down, the starches become accessible. Suddenly, foods that were useless or dangerous became staples of the diet. Scientists believe this is one of the reasons human brains got larger. Cooked food provided more calories with less digestive effort. That extra energy could go to building and maintaining a bigger brain. Fire made us smarter, literally. And fire created something else just as important: social bonds. Picture a group sitting around a fire at night, the flames light their faces, the darkness presses in beyond the circle of light. This is when stories are told, when knowledge is shared, when children learn from elders. The fire becomes the heart of the community. It's where you gather, it's where you feel safe, it's where you belong. Anthropologists believe that sitting around fires at night, talking, sharing, teaching is when human language really developed. Because for the first time we had safe time. time when we weren't running, hunting, or hiding. Time to communicate. Fire gave us language, and language gave us everything else. But controlling fire wasn't easy. It required toughness of a completely different kind. Because fire doesn't just sit there. It demands constant attention. It needs to be fair. It needs to be protected from wind and rain. It needs to be kept alive through the night because starting a new fire was incredibly difficult. For a long time, humans couldn't make fire. We could only keep it. So when lightning struck and gave you fire, you had to keep those embers alive, day and night, through storms, through migrations, through everything. Losing the fire was a catastrophe. It meant going back to cold nights and raw food. It meant vulnerability. It meant someone had to wait for lightning to strike again or try to steal fire from another group. So fire became sacred. It was guarded. It was tended. It was the most precious resource the group had. Children learned from the youngest age how to feed the fire, which wood burned hot, which wood burned long, how to arrange embers so they'd smoulder through the night without burning out or spreading into danger. Mistakes were paid for in burns. Everyone who worked with fire got burned. Hands scarred from embers, arms singed from getting too close. But those burns were the price of survival. And then, at some point, humans figured out how to make fire themselves. This was revolutionary. The most common method was the hand drill, spinning a stick against a piece of wood until friction created enough heat to ignite tinder. This required practice, patience, and incredibly tough hands. Try it sometime. Try rubbing 2 sticks together until they make fire. Your hands will blister within minutes. Your arms will burn with fatigue, and you probably won't succeed because you haven't spent your entire life developing the technique. Ancient humans could do it because they trained since childhood. Their hands were tough enough to handle the friction. Their technique was refined through hundreds of attempts. They knew exactly which wood to use, how dry it needed to be, how to prepare the tinder so the tiny ember would catch. Making fire was a skill that required both physical toughness and deep knowledge, and once you had that skill, you had power. Fire could be used as a weapon. A burning branch kept predators at bay better than any spear. Fire could be used to hunt. Setting grasslands ablaze could drive animals toward waiting hunters. Fire could be used to manage the landscape. Controlled burns cleared underbrush, and the new growth that sprouted afterward attracted grazing animals. Humans went from being afraid of fire to being masters of it, and that mastery put us on a path toward dominance. But here's what I find most incredible about fire. It's not that we learn to control it. Lots of animals learn impressive skills. Crows use tools, chimps hunt in coordinated groups, dolphins have complex communication. What's incredible is that we kept the knowledge alive for hundreds of thousands of years. Every generation taught the next. The skill never died. The knowledge compounded. Fire techniques got better. Understanding of different woods grew. Methods for starting fires improved. Eventually humans invented the bow drill, which made fire starting easier. Later, flint and steel. Later, matches. But it all started with someone brave enough to reach into burning embers and carry them back to their group. That person was tough in a way we rarely think about. Not tough because they could fight. Tough because they could endure pain for the benefit of others. Tough because they could look at something terrifying and see possibility. That's the kind of toughness that defines humanity. We don't just endure. We take the things that threaten us and turn them into tools. We take danger and transform it into safety. We take the weapon nature uses against us and make it our own. And we share it. Because fire isn't fire unless it's shared. One person with fire can survive. A group with fire can thrive. If you're loving this journey into our past, consider sharing this video with someone who'd appreciate it. Your friends, your family, anyone who's ever wondered what real toughness looks like. Now, let's talk about what humans did once we had fire, tools, and knowledge. We did something that should have been impossible. We started hunting the giants. Chapter 4: Walking with Giants. The hunt that changed everything. Picture a mammoth. Not the way you see them in cartoons. I mean really picture one. 15 feet tall at the shoulder, weighing 6 tons, covered in thick hair and hide tough as leather. Tusks as long as your entire body, curved and sharp enough to gore through anything. A creature built to survive ice ages, predators, and anything else nature could throw at it. Now picture yourself standing in front of that mammoth with a wooden spear. That's not bravery, that's insanity. And yet our ancestors did it. Repeatedly. Successfully. They hunted mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, woolly rhinos and other megafauna that shouldn't have had any predators at all. How? The answer reveals something profound about human toughness. Because we didn't do it through strength. We did it through something much more powerful. We outwitted them. Let me walk you through an actual mammoth hunt as it might have happened 30,000 years ago in Ice Age Europe. The hunting party consists of 15 people, 10 men, 5 women. They've been tracking the mammoth herd for 2 days, staying downwind so the animals don't catch their scent. They're not looking for a healthy adult mammoth. That would be suicide. They're looking for a target, an old male, limping slightly, separated from the main herd. This is important. Ancient hunters were intelligent. They didn't take unnecessary risks. They look for weakness the same way lions do. Once they've identified their target, the real work begins. The group splits up. 5 people circle around to the far side of the mammoth. The other 10 stay hidden in the tree line. They wait, sometimes for hours. Patience is part of the hunt. When everyone is in position, the group on the far side makes their move. They step out of cover. They shout. They wave burning branches. The mammoth, startled, turns and runs directly toward the concealed hunters. As the massive animal thunders past, spears fly. Not aiming to kill immediately. That's impossible with the mammoth. Instead, they aim for legs, belly, and flanks. They want to wound it, slow it down. The mammoth bellows and charges. Everyone scatters. This is where the danger peaks. One misstep means death. A mammoth can crush a human with its foot or impale them with its tusks. But the hunters are fast and coordinated. They regroup, they follow. The wounded mammoth is bleeding now, leaving a trail. Is also getting weaker. The hunt might continue for hours, sometimes for days. The hunters follow relentlessly, throwing more spears whenever they get close enough. They don't let the animal rest. They push it past exhaustion. This is called persistence hunting, and humans are uniquely good at it. We can sweat to cool ourselves. We can carry water. We can keep going long after other predators give up. Finally, the mammoth can't go any further. It collapses, exhausted and bleeding. The hunters move in carefully. More spears finish what the chase began. And then comes the reward. A single mammoth could feed the group for weeks. The meat was precious. The fat was essential for surviving cold winters. The bones could be shaped into tools. The hide could be used for shelter. The tusks could be carved into art or implements. One successful mammoth hunt changed everything for that group. It meant survival through winter. It meant strength and health. It meant life. But let's be clear about what this required. First, cooperation at a level most animals never achieve. Every person had a role. Everyone had to execute their part perfectly. One person panicking could doom the entire group. Second, it required weapons. Those spears weren't just sticks, they were carefully crafted tools, with stone points chipped to razor sharpness, attached with sinew or plant fibre. Making them required skill passed down through generations. Third, it required knowledge. Which animals to target, when to strike, how to predict behaviour, where to aim spears for maximum effect. This knowledge came from experience, from failed hunts and successful ones, from stories told around fires. Fourth, and most importantly, it required courage that's almost incomprehensible today. Think about what it means to stand your ground when 6 tons of angry mammoth is charging at you. Your body is screaming at you to run. Every instinct says flee. But you hold your position long enough to throw your spear, because if you don't, your family might starve this winter. That's not reckless. That's calculated courage. It's choosing to face fear because the alternative is worse. And here's what blows my mind. This wasn't rare. This was normal life. Boys trained from childhood to become hunters. They practiced with smaller animals first, rabbits, birds, deer, working their way up in size and danger until they were ready to face megafauna. By the time a young man went on his first mammoth hunt, he'd spent years preparing. He'd heard stories of every hunt the elders could remember. He'd practiced throwing spears thousands of times. He'd watched, he'd learned, he'd imagined the moment over and over, but nothing fully prepares you for that first time. And some didn't survive it. Ancient burial sites show young men with injuries consistent with being trampled or gored. The hunt was dangerous. People died. But they kept doing it, generation after generation, because the reward was survival. And over time, humans got better and better at it. We invented the atlatl, a spear-throwing device that increased power and distance. We invented better techniques for working stone into sharper points. We learned to coordinate larger groups. We even learned to drive entire herds off cliffs, killing dozens of animals at once. We went from being prey to being the apex predator on the entire planet. And here's the controversial question nobody likes to ask. Did we hunt too well? Because around 12,000 years ago, most of the megafauna went extinct. Mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, dozens of enormous species vanished relatively quickly. Climate change played a role. The Ice Age was ending. Environments were shifting. But there's strong evidence that human hunting was a major factor too. We were too good at it. We could find animals that had never faced a predator like us before. We could coordinate attacks that no prey had evolved defenses against. We were the asteroid that hit the megafauna, an intelligence-based extinction event. Is that something to be proud of, or something to think carefully about? I'll let you decide. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Did ancient humans hunt species to extinction, and does that change how you see them? But regardless of the answer, the fact remains, we were tougher than the giants, not because we were bigger, because we were smarter, more patient and willing to face fear together. And that toughness didn't just apply to hunting, it applied to something even more essential: water. The one thing you can't survive without, the one thing that could disappear without warning and kill everyone in days. Let's talk about the water wars. Chapter 5. The Water Wars, when droughts nearly ended humanity. You can survive 3 weeks without food if you have to. Your body will eat itself, burn through fat and muscle, but you'll stay alive. You can survive 3 minutes without air, maybe 4 if you're trained. But water? 3 days. Maybe 4 if you're lucky and it's not too hot. After that, your organs fail, your brain swells, and you die. Water is everything, and for most of human history, it was never guaranteed. Let me take you to East Africa, about 70,000 years ago. Something catastrophic is happening to the climate. A supervolcano has erupted on the other side of the world, in what's now Indonesia. Ash has filled the atmosphere, temperatures are dropping globally, and in Africa the rains are failing. Lakes that have existed for thousands of years are shrinking. Rivers are drying up. The savanna, usually golden with grass, is turning brown and dusty. Animals are dying, and humans are dying too. Scientists believe the global human population dropped to maybe 10,000 people during this period, maybe fewer. We came terrifyingly close to extinction. The survivors were the ones tough enough to find water when there was none. Let me show you how they did it. First, they followed animals. Elephants, with their incredible memory, knew where ancient water sources were. Even when the surface was dry, elephants would dig with their tusks and feet, creating wells. Humans learned to watch elephants and use the same spots. Second, they learned to read plants. Certain trees, like acacias, have roots that reach deep underground to hidden water. Where these trees grew green while everything else died, humans learned to dig. Third, they carried knowledge from previous droughts. Elders who'd survived earlier dry periods remembered places where water had persisted. Underground springs, caves with hidden pools, rocky outcrops where morning dew collected. This knowledge saved lives, but finding water was only half the battle. Defending it was the other half, because when water is scarce, every living thing converges on the same few sources, and that creates conflict. Imagine your group has found a spring. It's barely flowing, just a trickle, but it's water. You're setting up camp nearby because leaving means death. Then another human group appears over the ridge. They're desperate too. Their children are dying of thirst. Their elders can't walk another mile. They need this water. What happens next? Sometimes groups shared. They negotiated. They took turns. They recognized that conflict would cost lives nobody could afford to lose. But sometimes they fought. Archaeological evidence shows violent conflicts over resources during periods of climate stress. Skeletons with spear wounds, evidence of raids and battles. The water wars were real, and this created a different kind of toughness. It's one thing to hunt an animal, it's another to face other humans who are just as smart, just as desperate, and just as armed as you are. But here's what's remarkable. Most of the time, humans found ways to cooperate. Because unlike lions fighting over a kill, humans could communicate. They could negotiate. They could make deals. You can use the spring in the mornings, we'll use it in the evenings. If you help us hunt, we'll share the water. Marry your daughter to our son, and both groups can use the spring. These kinds of agreements required trust, and trust required toughness too. The toughness to honor agreements when it would be easier to betray. The toughness to see former strangers as allies. Water forced humans to build larger social networks. Groups that had always been separate started cooperating, trading, sharing knowledge. This created something anthropologists call cultural exchange, and it made humans even more adaptable. A technique for finding water that worked in one region could be shared with groups hundreds of miles away. A story about surviving drought became knowledge that saved distant relatives. The water wars, paradoxically, made us more connected. But the physical toughness required to survive drought can't be understated. Imagine walking 20 miles in a single day under brutal sun with no water. Your lips crack and bleed, your tongue swells, your head throbs, every step is agony, and you keep walking, because stopping means death. Ancient humans developed bodies that could handle dehydration better than almost any other mammal. We can lose up to 10% of our body weight in water and still function. Most animals would die at half that. We evolved to be drought resistant, because the ones who weren't didn't survive to pass on their genes. And here's something that might surprise you. Women were especially good at surviving drought. Why? Because women, on average, carry more body fat than men, and body fat stores water. During extreme dehydration, that extra fat could mean the difference between life and death. In fact, let's talk about women more broadly. Because the story of human toughness isn't complete without them, I'll ask you a question. Who do you think was tougher? The hunters who faced down mammoths, or the mothers who gave birth in the wilderness and kept their children alive in a world trying to kill them? Let me tell you about the mothers of the Ice Age. Chapter 6, Mothers of the Ice Age, the women who saved our species. Here's a scene that happened millions of times across human history. A woman in labour, lying on the ground far from any shelter. Her group has stopped moving for now, but they can't stop for long. Predators are always near, food is always scarce. She's surrounded by other women who are helping her. They've done this before, they know what to expect and what can go wrong. The labour lasts hours, maybe a day. There's no medication for pain, no epidural, no hospital, just breath, endurance, and the support of her sisters and mothers. Childbirth in the ancient world was extraordinarily dangerous. Modern medicine has made us forget just how dangerous. Even today, in places without medical care, childbirth is one of the leading causes of death for women. In the ancient world, it was worse, much worse. Women died from hemorrhaging, from infections, from complications nobody understood or could treat. Babies died too. Stillbirths were common. Infants who survived birth often didn't survive the first year. And yet women kept doing it. They kept having children. They kept bringing new life into a world that was almost unimaginably harsh. That's toughness on a level that deserves way more recognition than it gets, but it doesn't stop at childbirth. Once a child was born, the mother's job was just beginning. She had to feed that child, breastfeed for years, often while pregnant with the next one. She had to carry that child everywhere the group went. Remember, these people were nomadic. They walked constantly, carrying a baby for miles every day while also gathering food, processing it, making clothes, tending fire, watching for danger. That's a workload that would break most modern people in a week, and it never stopped. As soon as one child could walk on their own, there was often another baby to carry. But here's what history often ignores. Women weren't just mothers. They were essential providers. In most hunter-gatherer societies, women provided the majority of calories. Men hunted, and when hunts were successful, that was a big boost of protein and fat. But hunts often failed, sometimes for days or weeks at a time. Women, meanwhile, gathered plant foods daily. Roots, tubers, nuts, fruits, seeds, insects. The gathering was constant, reliable, and essential. This meant women needed to know more about plants than almost anyone today does. Which ones were edible, which were medicinal, which were poisonous, when each one was in season, where to find them. Women carried botanical libraries in their heads, and they taught this knowledge to their daughters. Mothers and daughters would spend entire days together gathering, and the entire time was a teaching opportunity. See this plant? Don't eat it. But if you crush the leaves and put them on a wound, it stops infection. This root is only good in spring, by summer it's too bitter. These berries look just like the safe ones, but see the difference in the leaves? These will kill you. This knowledge saved lives, constantly, and women were also tool makers. They wove baskets to carry food, they sewed clothing from animal hides, they made containers for water, they processed plant fibers into cordage for 1,000 uses. These weren't hobbies, these were survival skills as important as hunting. But let's go back to toughness for a moment. because there's a kind of endurance women display that's easy to overlook. Men faced danger in bursts. A hunt was intense, terrifying, and potentially lethal, but then it was over. You either succeeded or failed, lived or died. Women faced constant, grinding, never-ending work, from before sunrise to after sunset, every single day, for their entire lives, and they did it while managing pain. Menstruation without any of the products we take for granted today, pregnancy and all its discomforts, childbirth, nursing, all while walking miles, working constantly, and staying alert for danger. That's marathon-level endurance. That's a kind of toughness that doesn't get celebrated enough. And here's something that should make you think. We know more about ancient male activities than female activities. Why? Because weapons and hunting leave obvious archaeological evidence, stone points, butchered bones, cave paintings of hunting scenes. But gathering? Baskets decompose, plant foods leave almost no trace. The knowledge passed between mothers and daughters was oral, so it vanished with them. This means history has systematically undervalued women's contributions. We've told the story of human survival as if it were mostly about hunting, because that's what leaves evidence. But if you actually lived in a hunter-gatherer society, you'd quickly realize that women's work was just as essential, more consistent, more reliable, and arguably tougher, because it never stopped. So here's my controversial question for you. Who was tougher, the Ice Age hunter or the Ice Age mother? Think about it, really think about it. Then drop a comment with your answer. I'm genuinely curious what you think. Now, let's shift gears, because we've talked about daytime survival, finding food, water, tools. But half of life happens in darkness, and the night was when humans were most vulnerable. Until we learn to turn darkness into our domain, let's talk about the night the predators lost. Easy.
As I show you the way.
Chapter 7. The Night the Predators Lost. How Darkness Became Ours. Imagine it's 200,000 years ago. The sun is setting over the African savanna. As darkness spreads, the world transforms. For every animal without fire, night means hiding. It means finding shelter and waiting for dawn. The ones who don't hide become prey. Lions prowl. Hyenas hunt in packs. Leopards move through darkness with perfect stealth. These predators own the night. They evolved for it. Night vision, silent movement, perfect adaptation to darkness. And humans? We have terrible night vision. We can't see more than a few yards in darkness. We're slow. We're vulnerable. By every measure, we should have been easy prey once the suns went down. But then fire changed everything. With fire, humans created artificial daylight. We extended our day by hours. While every other animal settled into hiding or hunting, humans sat around flames, working, teaching, talking, creating. The night that belonged to predators suddenly had competition, but it wasn't easy. Keeping the night safe required constant vigilance. Picture a typical night in a hunter-gatherer camp. The group has gathered in a loose circle. In the center, a fire burns. Everyone positions themselves within the circle of light. Children sleep closest to the fire, protected. Adults sit around the perimeter, some working on tools, some telling stories, some just watching the darkness, and beyond the firelight, eyes reflect the flames. Green eyes, yellow eyes. The predators are there, just out of reach, waiting for any mistake. Someone has to stay awake through the night, feeding the fire. Not one person, several, taking turns, because if the fire dies, everything changes. The protective barrier disappears. This created a rotation of watchfulness. While most slept, some stayed alert, eyes scanning the darkness, ears listening for the sounds that meant danger. A low growl, the snap of a branch, the rustle of grass. And when danger came too close, there was a response. Someone would grab a burning branch and rush toward the sound, shouting. Others would wake, grab weapons, add their voices. The message to predators was clear. We're not easy prey anymore. Most of the time, this was enough. Predators learned that humans with fire were dangerous. The risk wasn't worth it. But sometimes predators attacked anyway. Evidence from ancient campsites shows it. Bones scattered by hyenas, signs of violent conflict. Occasionally, human remains showing that the night's defenses failed. The toughness required to face this night after night is hard to comprehend. Modern soldiers on deployment might pull guard duty for a few hours, knowing they have backup weapons and fortifications. Ancient humans pulled guard duty every single night of their entire lives, knowing that one mistake meant death for them and their families. And they did it without panic, without giving up, without letting fear win. Over time, something remarkable happened. Humans didn't just defend against the night. We pushed back. With torches, we extended our territory. We could hunt at night if we needed to. We could travel after sunset. We could move through darkness in ways no other creature could. The night became ours, and this created a psychological shift. For millions of years, darkness meant danger. It was when our ancestors were most vulnerable. Fear of the dark is hardwired into us because those who weren't afraid died. But once we controlled fire, we could challenge that fear. We could sit in darkness with flames between us and danger and feel safe. This created space for something extraordinary. Culture. Around fires at night, humans talked. We told stories, we made art, we taught children, we bonded as groups. Anthropologists believe this is when language really exploded, because for the first time we had hours of safe time to communicate complex ideas. Stories became repositories of knowledge. Myths explained the world. Songs carried history. Rituals bonded the group. And all of it happened at night, around fires, in the space we'd stolen from predators. So when I say humans conquered the night, I don't just mean we survived it. I mean we transformed it into something predators never could. An opportunity. This is the toughness that defined our species. We didn't accept the limitations nature gave us. We found ways around them. Too weak to fight predators? Build better weapons? Too vulnerable at night? Control fire? Can't survive alone? Build stronger groups. Every limitation became a challenge to overcome. And we overcame them all. If you're still with me at this point, thank you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because we're about to dive into something even more epic. The Great Migration. The moment when humans left Africa and spread across the entire world. On foot, facing every environment Earth could throw at them. This is where toughness reached its ultimate test. Oh yeah. Chapter 8. The Great Migration, 70,000 years on foot. Let's talk about the greatest journey in human history. A journey so long that it took thousands of generations. Journey that covered every continent except Antarctica. Starting about 70,000 years ago, humans began leaving Africa in small groups. They walked. They walked for thousands of years, and they never stopped. By 40,000 years ago, humans had reached Europe, Asia, and Australia. By 15,000 years ago, humans had crossed into the Americas. Every environment on Earth, humans adapted to it. Deserts, jungles, mountains, ice sheets, islands, coastlines. No other mammal did this. No other species spread so far, so fast. How? The answer is the toughness we've been exploring this whole time. The ability to learn, teach, adapt, endure, and keep walking no matter what. Let me show you what this looked like. Imagine you're part of a small group living in East Africa 70,000 years ago. Your band of 30 people has always lived in this region, but resources are getting scarce. Drought has reduced the water sources. Game animals are harder to find. Some families decide to move north following the river systems. They don't know what they'll find. They just know staying means starvation. They walk for weeks, for months, through landscapes they have never seen. Some groups turn back. It's too hard, too dangerous. But some keep going. They reach the coast of the Red Sea, and here something incredible happens. The water is shallow enough in places that they can walk across to the Arabian Peninsula. They cross. They're now outside Africa. For the first time in millions of years of human evolution, people are on a different continent, and the challenges multiply. Arabia is desert. Finding water is harder than anything they've ever experienced. But they remember techniques from previous droughts. They dig, they follow animals, they adapt. Some groups stop here. They find ways to survive in this harsh environment. But others keep moving, following coastlines, following rivers, generation after generation pushing further. By 60,000 years ago, humans have reached India. By 50,000 years ago, Southeast Asia. By 45,000 years ago, Australia. Think about what reaching Australia meant. It required boats. Early humans had to build watercraft capable of crossing open ocean. They had to navigate. They had to take the risk of sailing out of sight of land. And they did it. Successfully. By 40,000 years ago, other groups had pushed north into Europe. And here they faced something no human had ever encountered. Ice Age conditions. Winters with temperatures far below anything African humans had ever known. Snow, ice, frozen ground. And they survived. They invented new clothing. They learned to hunt cold-adapted animals like reindeer and mammoths. They built more permanent shelters. Every challenge was met with innovation. Then came the greatest migration of all, reaching the Americas. During the last ice age, sea levels dropped enough that a land bridge appeared between Siberia and Alaska. Humans crossed this bridge, entering a completely new world, and they spread. Within a few thousand years, humans had reached the southern tip of South America. That's nearly 10,000 miles from Alaska. They walked it, over generations, through every climate and terrain imaginable. This is toughness beyond anything we can really grasp. Think about your own life. How far do you walk in a week, a month, a year? These people walk their entire lives. Their children walked their entire lives. And their children's children. For thousands of years, humans walked. And the knowledge required to do this successfully is staggering. They had to learn new plants in every region, new animals, new water sources, new dangers. They had to adapt their tools, their shelters, their strategies. They had to maintain their culture while everything around them changed. And they did it through teaching, through stories, through cooperation. By the time humans had spread across the world, we'd become the most adaptable species ever. We could survive anywhere because we could learn anything. But here's the question nobody likes to ask. What happened to the other humans we encountered? Because when groups spread into Europe and Asia, they didn't find empty continents. They found other human species already living there. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, maybe others we haven't discovered yet. What happened when two different human species met? Were they friendly? Did they fight? Did they interbreed? The answer is all of the above. And that brings us to one of the most controversial chapters in human history. Chapter 9. The Lost Children. Growing up in the hardest world. Let's talk about something we don't discuss enough. Childhood in the ancient world. Because if you think adults had it hard, children had it worse, much worse. Child born in the ancient world faced odds we can barely imagine. Estimates suggest that nearly half of children died before age 5. Some estimates go even higher. Disease, starvation, predators, accidents, 1,000 dangers waited. And yet humans kept having children. Because despite the risks, enough survived to carry the species forward. But what was it like to actually be a child in that world? Let me paint you a picture. You're 3 years old, you have vague memories of being carried everywhere by your mother. But now you're expected to walk on your own. The group is moving, following animal herds, and you have to keep up. Your legs are short. You get tired quickly, but nobody can carry you anymore. Your mother is pregnant again, and she needs her strength. So you walk. You cry sometimes, but you learn quickly that crying doesn't help. You just have to keep going. You're hungry. Often. There's food, but never quite enough. Adults eat first because they need the strength to hunt and gather. Children get what's left. You learn to eat things that taste bad. Bitter roots, insects, whatever is offered. There's no such thing as picky eating. You eat what's available or you starve. And you're always learning. Your parents and the other adults teach you constantly. Which plants are dangerous, which animals to avoid, how to make fire, how to chip stone, how to be quiet when predators are near. These aren't optional lessons. Your life depends on them. By age 6 or 7, you're expected to contribute. Gathering easy plants, collecting firewood, watching younger children, helping process food. Childhood isn't separate from adult life, it's preparation for it. And that preparation is harsh. Boys start practicing with spears almost as soon as they can walk. They throw at targets. They hunt small animals, rabbits, birds, learning accuracy and patience. Girls learn to gather, to process plants, to make baskets and clothing. They learn to recognize thousands of plants by sight, smell and taste, and everyone learns to watch, to be aware, because danger is constant. A child who wandered away from the group might be snatched by a leopard. A child who ate the wrong plant might die convulsing. A child who fell while climbing might break bones that would never heal properly. Death was always close, and yet children still played. They still laughed. They still found joy, because humans are resilient. Even in the hardest circumstances, we find moments of lightness. Children played games that were also training. Chase games taught speed and endurance. Tracking games taught observation. Wrestling taught combat skills. Play was practice. And practice was survival. But here's what strikes me most about ancient children. They grew up fast. By age 10, a child had often seen death multiple times. Siblings who didn't survive. Elders who died from injury or age. Friends taken by predators or disease. They understood mortality in a way modern children don't. And this made them tougher. Not emotionally numb, just realistic. They knew life was fragile. They knew survival required effort. They knew their role in the group mattered. By the time they reached adolescence, they were already more capable than most modern adults. They could find food in landscapes that look empty to us. They could navigate without maps. They could make fire, tools, shelter from scratch. They were survivors because they had to be. And here's the controversial part. Or was they better or worse than modern childhood? Modern children have safety, comfort, education, but they also have anxiety, depression, a sense of purposelessness. Ancient children had hardship, danger and death, but they also had clear purpose, strong community bonds and deep connection to the natural world. I'm not saying we should go back, I'm just asking, what did we lose along the way? And what did we gain? Drop a comment with your thoughts. How would ancient childhood compare to modern childhood? What are we missing? Now, let's move to the final confrontation. Because as humans spread across the world, we encountered other human species, and what happened next shaped who we are today. Chapter 10: The Final Test. When two human species faced each other. Around 50,000 years ago, two groups of humans met for the first time in what's now Europe. One group was Homo sapiens, our ancestors, coming out of Africa with stone tools, fire, and language. The other group was Neanderthals. They'd lived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. They were adapted to cold climates, stronger than sapiens, larger brains, sophisticated tools, burial rituals, art. Neanderthals were not primitive brutes. They were intelligent, complex humans, just a different species. When these two groups met, what happened? For thousands of years we didn't know, but now, with genetic evidence, we're starting to understand, and the answer is complicated. Some groups fought, evidence of violence exists, territories were contested, resources were limited, especially during ice ages. But some groups didn't fight. They cooperated, they traded, and they interbred. Today, if you have European or Asian ancestry, about 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal. That means your ancestors didn't just meet Neanderthals, they had children with them. This raises profound questions. Were they different species if they could interbreed? Were they enemies or just different tribes of humans? We don't know. What we do know is that within a few thousand years after sapiens arrived in Europe, Neanderthals disappeared. Did we outcompete them for resources? Did we absorb them through interbreeding? Did we kill them in conflicts? Probably all three, in different places, in different ways. And this is where the story gets uncomfortable, because it's possible that our ancestors drove another intelligent, complex human species to extinction, not through any single war, but through thousands of years of competition, conflict, and genetic absorption. If that's true, what does it say about us? Are we the victors in an ancient war? Are we the survivors who proved toughest? Or are we the species that couldn't coexist with others like us? I don't have the answer, but I think the question matters, because today, we're still the only human species left, and we have to ask ourselves, what responsibility does that give us? Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is one of the most controversial topics in anthropology, and I'm curious what you think. Now, let's come back to the present. Because all of this ancient toughness isn't gone, it's still inside you. Let me show you how. Chapter 11: The Bodies That Remember. What our bones still carry. Your body is an ancient thing. Yes, you were born in the modern world, but your DNA is ancient. It's been passed down through thousands of generations. And it remembers. Let me show you what I mean. When you feel stress, your body releases cortisol. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, you enter fight or flight mode. This response evolved for life or death situations, a predator attacking, a rival tribe threatening, immediate danger. Your ancestors who had strong stress responses survived. They fought or ran when they needed to. The ones who couldn't were killed. So natural selection favoured anxiety. It favoured fear. It favoured the ability to panic when necessary. And now you have that same response, except you're not facing lions. You're facing work deadlines, traffic, social media. Your body can't tell the difference. It responds to modern stress the same way it responded to ancient danger. With full alarm. That's your ancient body remembering how to survive. Or think about pain tolerance. Some people can endure extraordinary pain. They walk on broken bones. They keep functioning through injuries that would stop others. Where does that come from? From ancestors who had no choice, who had to keep moving even when hurt. who survived because they could tolerate more pain than their neighbours. That toughness is genetic. It's in your nervous system. Or think about endurance. Humans can run marathons, we can walk all day, we can keep going when we're exhausted. Most animals can't. They sprint, then rest, sprint, then rest. We're built for steady, relentless endurance, because that's how our ancestors hunted, that's how they migrated, that's how they survived. You still have that endurance. It's sleeping inside you, waiting to be used. And here's the beautiful part. When you push yourself, when you face challenges, when you endure hardship, you're not doing something new. You're waking up ancient capabilities that have always been there. That's why people feel so alive when they're tested. Why hiking in nature feels restorative. Why overcoming challenges builds confidence. You're connecting to something deep. Something that's been in your lineage for hundreds of thousands of years. You're tougher than you think you are, because toughness isn't optional, it's your inheritance. Every time you keep going when you want to quit, you're channeling your ancestors. Every time you face fear and move forward anyway, you're honouring their memory. Every time you endure, you prove that their sacrifices weren't in vain. You are here because the toughest humans who ever lived fought for survival, generation after generation, until their genes reached you. Don't waste that gift. Before we wrap up, one last request. Share this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message, because we all need reminders of how strong we really are. Now, let's finish this journey with one final thought. Chapter 12, Why You Are the Toughest Thing Alive. Here we are. We've walked through the ancient world together. We've faced hunger, thirst, predators, droughts, and dangers that would break most modern people in hours. And through it all, one truth has emerged. You are the product of the toughest quality control in the universe. Think about it. Every single one of your ancestors survived long enough to reproduce. Not just survived, thrived enough to raise children who survived to raise their own children. For thousands of generations, that's thousands of people who faced impossible odds, who walked through deserts without water, who gave birth without help, who fought off predators, who healed from injuries that should have killed them. And every single one of them succeeded. Because if even one of them had failed, you wouldn't exist. That's not just luck. That's resilience on a scale so vast it's almost incomprehensible. Your DNA is a survivor's manual, written in the language of genes, tested by nature herself, refined through millions of years. You carry the strength of ancient hunters who took down mammoths with spears. You carry the endurance of ancient migrants who walked from Africa to the Americas. You carry the intelligence of ancient teachers who passed knowledge through stories. You carry the courage of ancient mothers who gave birth in the wilderness. You carry the resilience of ancient children who grew up in the hardest world imaginable. All of that is inside you, right now, and here's what that means for your life today. When things get hard, when you feel like you can't keep going, when obstacles seem impossible, remember this: you are built for hardship. Your ancestors faced worse, much worse, and they didn't just survive, they prevailed. You have the same DNA, the same nervous system, the same capacity for endurance, adaptation, and resilience. The only difference is that you've never been tested the way they were, but that doesn't mean the capability isn't there. So when life challenges you, don't think of yourself as weak. Think of yourself as an ancient warrior momentarily living in an easy world. When you face fear, don't think of yourself as a coward. Think of yourself as carrying the courage of people who faced lions with wooden spears. When you face pain, don't think of yourself as fragile. Think of yourself as carrying the toughness of people who walked on broken bones because stopping meant death. You're tougher than any soldier alive today, not because you've trained more, but because your ancestors survived longer, harsher trials than any modern military can simulate. You are the descendant of the Ice Age, the descendant of droughts, the descendant of migrations across continents, the descendant of the greatest survival story ever told. And that story isn't over. It continues in you, in your choices, in your endurance, in your refusal to give up when things get hard. So honor your ancestors, not by worshipping them, but by living up to their legacy. Be tough, not in the sense of being hard or cruel, but in the sense of enduring, adapting, learning, cooperating, facing fear. Be the human they died to create, because every challenge you face is an echo of challenges they faced. Every hardship you endure connects you to a lineage of survivors stretching back into the mists of time. You are not separate from them. You are them, reborn in a modern body, carrying the same fire they carried. The fire that burned in caves 300,000 years ago still burns in you, in your determination, in your will to keep going, in your refusal to quit. That fire is your birthright. Don't let it die. Before we close, let me ask you one last time. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because we're going to keep exploring what it means to be human. The good parts and the hard parts, the ancient wisdom and the modern challenges, and drop one final comment. What surprised you most about this story? What makes you see yourself differently? I read every comment. I want to hear from you. Thank you for spending these 2 hours with me. Thank you for walking through the ancient world. Thank you for honoring your ancestors by learning their story. You're tougher than you know. You're the descendant of legends. You're the product of the greatest survival story ever told. Never forget that. Now go out there and prove it. Good night. Sleep well, and dream of the strength that runs in your blood.